Jim Rohn once said, life is risky. You know how risky? No one comes out alive. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Lydia and I make faith-based content here on YouTube. I do release new videos every single Tuesday, so if you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you continue with us. And if you're coming back, welcome back. Hope you had an amazing week and you're keeping healthy and you're keeping warm or you're keeping cool, depending on which hemisphere you are in right now. We are in the middle of a series talking about habits that make for great Christians, because we're pursuing greatness, not only in our careers, not only in our finances, not only in our relationships, but in the most important relationship of all, in the most important aspect of our lives of all, and that is our Christian walk. Today we're talking about great Christians take great risks. But risk is just naturally part of life. And I have a question for you. Why does it seem like God uses more other people more than he uses others? Does he have favorites? Because, we look at Matthew, Jesus said that, for many are called, but few are chosen. Is it a matter of selection, or is it a matter of our willingness to be used by God? Our willingness to take steps of faith? Because we look throughout the Bible, we look throughout history, we see there's no rhyme or reason how God selects people. He uses women, he uses men, he uses women of different races, single, married, he uses educated and uneducated people. He uses rich and poor people. He uses educated and uneducated people. He uses socially people with social status and people without any social status. So is it a thing of he selects, or he opens the door and we choose if we accept it or not? When we look throughout the Bible, especially in the Gospels, Jesus was hardly ever was upset with his disciples, except when it was an issue of faith. Which leads me to Hebrews 11, where it says that it is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. My friends, ours is a life of faith. At one point or another in our lives, more often than we'd like it to happen, we will be in a situation where God pits obedience against comfort, our security, our reputation, and our willingness to risk being accepted or unaccepted by other people. But where there is no risk, there is no faith. And where there is no faith, there is no possibility of a genuine and intimate relationship with the Father. When we look at different examples in the Bible, we'll see the different lessons that each of the risks that they took show that what kind of risks or what kind of invitation of faith steps that God will call us to take. First, we find Moses. In Exodus 1-3, which I definitely encourage you to read for yourself, we see that Moses was a young guy, young prince, full of passion, wanted social justice. He wanted to free the people of Israel from slavery, but he did it in his own strength. So he ended up killing someone and ended up running away into exile. But hey, no problem. You know what? He ended up building a home for himself, got a wife, kids, had a good relationship with his father-in-law, was taking care of his sheep. Life was good. And then out of the blue, 4 years later, God is like, okay, get out of your comfort. You are called to be a deliverer. You may have tried to do it the way you wanted to do it, but now I'm calling you to do it the way I want to do it. And Moses had a choice. Am I going to leave the comfortable life that I've established for myself, or am I going to go back to a country which, more highly than unlikely, I'm going to be charged for treason and might be put to death? The king has been calling and waiting for me. And I'm not going back for my own good. My life is okay, but I'm going back for other people. And mind you, throughout Moses' life, leading the Israelites, they were constantly complaining. He went back. He risked his life in obedience to God, not for his own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And did he ever really get a thank you? Did they ever really appreciate or acknowledge or even understand the level of sacrifice that he made for him to step out in faith on their behalf? I dare say, not in his lifetime. And that is one lesson we learn as well from Moses, is that God may call us to sacrifice our own comforts, our own good for the benefit of others, and that may not always guarantee the acknowledgement, the appreciation of the sacrifice, the step of faith it took for us to obey God, not for our benefit, but for their benefit. But will you still obey God, regardless of whether you appreciate it or not? And second, we have David. 1 Samuel 17, he's out there bringing bread and cheese for his brothers who are in the army, and he finds out there is Goliath, the famous Goliath. And he had a choice. He's not in the army. He's minding his own business. He's just running an errand, but he hears God's name being defiled. There are people who are responsible, who it's their job to defend God's reputation. Will he step up to the plate since the people who are responsible for actually doing what needs to be done are not doing it? Or will he just be like, it's not my place, not my, But he took that step of faith and defended God's reputation without being asked. But he had a holy internal conviction that no, I will not be silent when I need to take an action. Because in life, there'll be moments where it will not be an overt ask to stand up for truth, to stand up for God, to stand up for what is right. But we are called as great Christians that our life is one of faith, and our faith is expressed in action. It's not just expressed in words. It's not just expressed in private with us praying and reading. It's expressed in how we live. It's expressed in when do we step up when we need to step up, or do we remain silent? And God so amazingly rewarded him and called him a man after his own heart. In the book of Esther, here we find a woman who was basically went from being an orphan to being a queen. Yes, she was still kind of sort of a slave, but she was a queen. Comfortable, not an idyllic situation, but she was comfortable. She didn't necessarily have power and authority, just a position. But yet, she was called to confront evil at the highest level. And she did, risking her very life. Because there's a saying that says, worse than 10 evil men are 1,000 good men who stay silent in the sight of evil. In our Christian walk, we'll be called to step up and confront evil, to confront injustice, to confront abuse, to confront abuse of authority in whatever space, in whatever table that God sets you before. We'll be placed in different rooms. We'll be placed in different spheres of life. And when that call comes, will you boldly, at the risk of losing your job, at the risk of losing face with some people, stand up and confront what needs to be confronted? That is part of being a great Christian. And that is the call to which we've been called to. And like Esther, she risked her life. We may not necessarily risk our life, as in our breath, but we may risk our livelihood. But that is the call that we've signed up for. That we're not going to just, good is not good enough. We're going for great. And my question is, will you be silent, or will you step up and confront evil when the moment calls? And next we find Jairus. Jairus is an interesting one. He's a synagogue leader in Israel, and he was one of the Pharisees, highly esteemed, wealthy, and then breaks protocol. His daughter is sick. We read his story in Luke 8. His daughter is sick, and he doesn't waste time. He goes straight to Jesus and says, Jesus, I need you to heal my daughter, which is against everything. I mean, when you think of the synagogue leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, all of them kind of hated Jesus. But did all of them really? Let's read it in John 12. It says, many people did believe in him, however, including some of the Jewish leaders, but they wouldn't admit it for fear that the Pharisees would expel them from the synagogue, for they loved human praise more than the praise of God. Jairus is one that confronts, will we esteem human praise more than acknowledging who God is? Will we let our pride, let something that we love die because we are scared of losing our reputation? Jairus' daughter's life was in danger. He had to choose. He went, since he was 6, to be a Jewish leader, to be in a synagogue, he had to go through such lengthy education and training, and he had to have money because that's how it worked. He had to have money and status. But he risked that to save his daughter. Not his own life, but his daughter. He had to put aside his pride. He had to, because he knew his people had always been accusing Jesus. So he's going to the very person that he knows is in part of a group that has been silent. Will you let pride stand in the way of something that you love living when that moment calls? Will pride keep you from something that you love dearly? Or will you acknowledge your need for God, even if it means you're breaking camp because you're pursuing the glory of God more than human praise and human acceptance? Lastly, we find Ananias and Barnabas in Acts 9 and 10. We find these two guys, amazing. Paul, we know Paul is the guy who wrote 2/3 of the Bible, but at first he was Saul, who went about just killing every Christian because he was convinced that they are going after like his tradition against the truth. These people that are Jesus followers, he wanted to kill them. And then he has a radical encounter with God, goes blind, and then interesting, he was on his way to actually kill the believers. And then God says to Ananias, knowing full well that Ananias is hiding from Saul, says, go to Saul. I've told him that I've converted him, and I told him that he should wait for you. And Ananias is like, wait, God, wait, this guy, you mean the one that's trying to kill me and everyone else who believes in you? And God says, yes. Ananias had a choice. Am I going to risk my life? I have no physical proof that what God has said is true. Am I going to risk my life, come out of hiding, and go to the very person who's murdering everyone in my camp? And he did. And he went, and miraculously, Paul got his sight. Paul got his calling to actually speak and preach to the Gentiles, which is pretty much you and me. And then in the same chapter, we find Barnabas, because Ananias risked his life to give Paul back his sight. But then trying to put him back into the community as for him to join the community of believers who he tried to kill was another story. They would not let him in because they were like, you are here to spy. We know. Barnabas had a standing with the believers. He took his reputation to risk his life and the lives of believers. Because if Paul was genuinely saved, awesome. But if he wasn't, he was actually exposing him to more believers, risking their very lives because he was hunting them. So these men risked both their lives and the lives of others to give one man a second chance. Sometimes our step of faith is giving someone who least deserves it, who there is no proof that they've changed, but on the word of God, we give that person another chance. We give that person an open door. And guess what? Because they took that risk, that sacrifice is still paying dividends today, because that Saul became Paul, who now is the very person who wrote 2/3 of the Bible, who we still speak about more than we actually speak about Ananias and Barnabas. But if there was no Ananias and Barnabas, there would be no Paul. There would be no you and me. So who is God tugging at you to maybe just give them a chance? So how about you? Do you fear God more than you fear what others think or say about you? Recall how God has been faithful in previous steps of faith. And is there someone or something God is calling you to let go of? Is there someone or something God is calling you to make things right again? Is there something God is calling you to step up and fight for? And I leave you with these words. Remember, faith is not fearlessness. It is a decision to obey even when you don't know or the outcome is not guaranteed, because we understand that above everything, above being loved, God wants us to trust Him, because it is impossible to please Him without faith. Love you guys. As always, I pray for you daily. Keep well. Please do encourage other people on this journey, and share with people in your world what you're learning and your experiences and reflections. I really hope that you're taking time to do the reflection questions, that are not just passing you by and moving right along. Have a good one. Stay blessed. Bye.